Candyman. Candyman? Candyman. Candyman? You thought. No way I'm saying that a fifth time. I wonder how many people did that intro. But anyway, if this is your first time here, then consider subscribing to the channel, because here we talk about movies, TV, and it's not only me blabbering on and on. This is the people's channel. I include the public's opinion on my videos. It's not just me. So let's go ahead and get into this video with Candyman. So without further ado, before we get to my review, let's go ahead and hear some of the public's opinion at last night's screening of Candyman.
Well, I thought it was a great sequel to the original, I think 1992 film. Great interpretation by Nia DaCosta and Jordan Peele. Yeah, and definitely recommend it for anyone that's gonna see it.
The story flowed pretty well, and it seemed like the movie was more than a horror movie. It was like a thriller too, and it spoke on a lot of different issues, and spoke about art, imitating life, and, you know, those type of things.
I actually saw the first one, so it kind of like combined a whole bunch of stuff. It was kind of really weird. You had to see the first one.
It spoke a lot about oppression, victimization of people.
It really added on to the theme of like gentrification being very prominent in our age now, which also kind of added on to the Candyman character being like popularized like today.
But the plot was really good. It was written really well. To me, all the performances were good and they were different. The personalities were different.
I liked the guy who ended up being Candyman, the artist.
Oh, I liked everyone, to be honest with you. I thought Yahya Abdul-Mateen II was great. He was amazing. Coleman Domingo as he played the laundromat owner. Terrific, amazing.
It wasn't typically scary. It's like it spoke to a lot of things that needed to be talked about, more or less, but it didn't scare me, but I liked it a lot.
Well, if the runtime was maybe added a couple 30 more minutes, maybe I would have been fine with that, but I think it's yeah, probably one of my personal favorites of this year.
I like how this movie took from the original and explained a lot of things, but you still should see the first one. But you don't particularly have to see the first one to know the main parts of what's really going on, you know? I would have to watch them both, but for me to say that this latest film is even close to the original one means it's good, because the first one is a classic.
So those were a few opinions from last night's screening of Candyman. I want to give a big shout out and a huge thank you to those who volunteered, to those who shared their thoughts. So now let's get into my review. So Candyman 2 or Candyman 2021, Candyman reboot, sequel, whatever you want to call it. The point is that Candyman, it's jumping on this bandwagon of not really being a reboot, but also being a direct sequel to the original. Pretty much jumping on that bandwagon as a lot of horror franchises are doing, much like Halloween. Halloween 2018, it pretty much ignored what everything happened after the first film. I believe the Scream franchise is doing that as well, so now Candyman is joining on this bandwagon. The movie does a good job in bringing Candyman into present time. It is not only acknowledging what happened in the original film, but it acknowledges the original events, not just by exposition, not just by someone saying it. It's through Anthony McCoy's character, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. He is a connecting link of this new Candyman film and the original. Can't say too much without spoiling it, but it's similar to what happens in the Halloween franchise when Laurie finds out that she is somebody connected to somebody else. If you've seen the Halloween franchise, then let that marinate and figure it out. The only problem I had was that the way that the Candyman was brought back it was just really told by somebody else. It was just told by somebody in a random night where this one character says, hey, you want to hear a scary story? Yeah, well, have you ever heard of the Candyman? Now, in a way, it might seem a little bit lazy, but it seems like it was just a way to get new audiences caught up into what happened in the original film, instead of having all these flashbacks or really just going back, because if you're a classic longtime fan, then you know what happened. But if you haven't seen the original, then this movie just kind of catches you up really quick without having to dwell too much and waste a lot of time. And that story was told by Nathan Stewart, who it was actually really funny. I mean, his character is just really hilarious. Whenever he was on screen, I found myself laughing. He was extremely hilarious. He was not a bad thing, but when you're dealing with a franchise like Candyman that was really dark, it was a really dark tone, and then just having a little bit too much humor kind of just brings down the tone a bit. He doesn't overcook it at all. He's really funny, but if I'm watching a horror movie, I just don't want too much humor. Teyonah Perez is actually the best character in this movie. She was actually my favorite out of all of them. And there are also some returning characters from the original film that I will not say because it would just spoil it. It would just be pretty obvious. You just have to go and see. I like that the movie doesn't rely on jump scares. There was actually little to no jump scares at all. And it's more of a mysterious thriller rather than a horror movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because a movie could be really good if it keeps the thrills, if it keeps that mystery without having to be too much horror. And if you've noticed, I haven't mentioned of how this new Candyman compares to Tony Todd's Candyman, because this movie explains that Candyman is more of an idea, of a belief, and I can't get too much into that. It's just something that you have to see for yourself. The only thing I will say is that the Candyman that barely appeared in these scenes wasn't really as scary. Didn't really quite give me those chills that Tony Todd gave in the original. He didn't even talk at all. He did was stare and just kind of sounded like his oxygen tank was cut off and couldn't breathe. Or just picture Ray Charles on crack going around killing everybody. And as some of my fellow moviegoers said, this movie really touches on gentrification, prejudice, racism, victimization. It really just goes deeper. I know the first film really did touch on those subjects as well, but this one went more into depth. Now these subjects are something that have always gone, and they're nothing new, there's nothing out of this world, but there are certain time periods where they go on more than other times, especially now since we just got through this whole movement of Black Lives Matter, the murders of George Floyd. So you could say in a way that this movie sends a message, and even through the murder scenes that happen, they're actually very subtle. The original film is also subtle as well. Both films try to send a message without directly saying it. It's just something that you have to really uncover it and discover it for yourself as you're watching it and really think about it. Like for example, in this new film, I won't spoil it, but there's this one scene where this kid sees the Candyman and he screams, and then the police, all these policemen immediately run to him to help him, and without even knowing what's going on, they attack this guy without even knowing, okay, what's the situation. All they heard was a scream. You have all these white police officers just attacking this one guy without knowing what's going on. And that really speaks to what we see in the real world today, that without even getting the whole picture, people just decide to act. So it's those type of messages that you get in this movie, even with all these murders. And that's what I really like about the Candyman franchise, that it's not just another slasher or thriller, but it's something with a message. This 2021 Candyman, it touched more on these delicate subjects, definitely more into depth than the first one. The beginning, the introduction in the plot was kind of, seemed a little bit lazy, but regardless, I had a good time. And even if you haven't seen the original, or if you have seen it, I would say it is worth having a movie night. Now, if you haven't seen the original Candyman, I would say go watch it before you see this new one. You don't necessarily have to, but it will definitely open up your perspective. It will definitely open up your mind, and you would understand this new film better if you see the original. I have a review video on the original, which I will have a link in the description below. And you know the drill. If you like this video, then smash that like button and smash the subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time.